I never imagined my life would turn into the kind of story people whisper about behind closed doors, but that's exactly what happened 2 years ago. Back then, I still believed in the idea of forever. I believed in marriage, loyalty, partnership, all the things my mother taught me to cherish. And I believed my husband Daniel believed in those things too. We've been married for 6 years. 6 years of trying doctor appointments, uncomfortable procedures, hormone injections that left my emotions wild and my body exhausted nights, staring at negative pregnancy tests until the world around me blurred. 6 years of hope, disappointment, and guilt I carried like a shadow. I blamed myself for everything. Daniel didn't stop me. In fact, he didn't say much at all anymore. I noticed the signs long before I admitted them to myself. The way he came home later, the way he avoided conversations about our future, the way his phone always stayed face down. I told myself he was stressed, work was hard, life was hard. Marriage went through phases. I clung to denial because the truth hurt too much, but truth doesn't disappear just because we close our eyes. One night, Daniel came home with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of guilt and something colder. Something like relief. He didn't sit down. He didn't take off his shoes. He just stood there staring at me like the life we'd built was a mistake he wished he had never made. Elena, he said quietly, we need to talk. My stomach dropped. Everyone knows those 4 words never lead anywhere good. He told me he was done. He couldn't live like this anymore. He wanted a family, a real one, as if the two of us weren't a family at all, and he couldn't waste more time hoping for something that might never happen. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't worry about the way my hands trembled. He didn't care that my heart was breaking right in front of him, Dot. Then he said the words that would haunt me for months. It's not your fault. But I can't stay with someone who can't give me children. Someone, that's what I have become. Not his wife. Not his partner. Just someone defective, disposable. I remember the way the room spun, how the walls felt too close, how my breath came out in desperate gasps. I asked him if he had met someone else. He didn't answer with words, only silence. And silence can be the loudest confession in the world. He packed a bag that night, walked out, didn't look back. The next morning, his side of the closet was empty, his toothbrush gone, his pillow missing. The life we built had vanished overnight, leaving only a hollow ache inside my chest. My mother begged me to come home for a while. She said grief was easier to carry when someone helped shoulder the weight. I didn't believe her, but I went anyway. For months, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment of our marriage, trying to find the moment I failed. I wondered what I could have done differently. Then my body changed. Subtle at first, then unmistakable, 2 pink lines. 2 lives. My shaking hand clutched the test, and I collapsed onto the bathroom floor, sobbing. After 6 years of trying, 6 years of heartbreak, it happened when my marriage was already dead. But the twist didn't end there. Dot. An ultrasound revealed something no one expected. 2 heartbeats. Twins. And just like that, the woman Daniel abandoned for being childless was carrying the very thing he threw me away for. I knew immediately I would not tell him. Not after what he said. Not after he made me feel worthless. These babies weren't a second chance for him. They were a second chance for me. For my future. For my heart. I decided to disappear from my old life entirely. My mother agreed. Build your life first, she said. If he ever learns the truth, it should be on your terms, not his. And so I did. I left our town, moved states, changed everything. A new apartment, a new job, a new version of myself. Stronger, quieter, more aware of the world's cruelty, but secrets don't stay buried forever. And neither do people who suddenly want something they once threw away. What I didn't know then was that Daniel wasn't done with me, or the story that would change all of our lives forever. Part 2, 5,000 characters. Motherhood changed me in ways I didn't expect. The pregnancy was hard. Twins always are. But I carried every discomfort with pride. Every kick reminded me that I wasn't alone anymore. Every heartbeat during checkups reminded me that life had finally chosen me. Even when Daniel didn't. When the twins were born, two perfect little miracles, one boy and one girl, something inside me healed. I named them Avery and Liam, names that felt soft, strong, hopeful. Names that carried no memory of the man who abandoned me. My mother moved in to help. The three of us built a world that felt peaceful, even when sleepless nights and endless diapers tried their best to overwhelm me. I loved every chaotic second. I found a part-time remote job doing administrative work for a small real estate firm. The pay wasn't incredible, but it was enough. I learned how to budget, how to stretch meals, how to carry two babies at once while opening the door with my elbow. Slowly, life felt good again, but life also has a funny way of reminding you that the past isn't done with you just because you're done with it. One afternoon, when the twins were about 8 months old, I received an unexpected message from an old friend from my previous town. "Hey, did you know Daniel has been asking around about you?" My heart stopped, asking about me. Why? What did he want? After what he did, he had no right to even say my name, let alone search for me. I ignored the message at first. I didn't want to give him space in my mind. But the next day, another message came. He came by my shop, said he wanted to apologize, asked if you were okay. He looked different. I didn't care. People always regret when their choices lead them into dark corners. Maybe the woman he left me for wasn't his happily ever after. Maybe she didn't want kids after all. Maybe karma had finally circled back. Whatever the reason, it wasn't my concern. But then came the message that made my blood run cold. He said he thinks you might have kept something from him. Kept something. The only thing I could have kept were the children I carried. My hands began to shake so hard I almost dropped my phone. How could he possibly know? I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't told anyone except family and a few trusted friends, all of whom promised to keep my secret. But secrets have cracks. And people talk. That night, after putting the twins to sleep, I sat on the edge of my bed, anxiety twisting in my stomach. What if he found me? What if he wanted rights? What if he tried to take them? The law wasn't always kind to single mothers. And he had money, influence, connections. I barely slept. Over the next week, my old friend updated me. Daniel was asking more questions. He seemed desperate. He had gone to the clinic where we used to do fertility treatments. Then to our old neighbors. Then to my old workplace. Every time I heard his name, fear curled deeper inside me. Then, on a Thursday morning, when sunlight was just streaming through the blinds, there was a knock on my door. Not gentle, not casual. A heavy, insistent knock that made my heart jump into my throat. I froze. The twins were in their playpen, babbling softly. My mother was at the grocery store. Another knock. Louder. "Elena?" My blood turned to ice. It was his voice. After 2 years of silence, after abandoning me, after shattering my life, he was at my door. I didn't move. Maybe he'd think he was mistaken, but then he said something that shattered any hope of that. "I know about the twins." I felt the room spin. My knees weakened. I grabbed the edge of the counter to steady myself. How? Who told him? Why now? I didn't open the door. I couldn't. He kept talking, each word hitting harder than the last. "Elena, please, I just want to talk. I made a mistake. I need to see them." Them, not me. Them. His priorities were clear, and I wasn't one of them. I didn't reply. Didn't breathe. Eventually he left. Or at least I assumed he did. I didn't go near the windows to check. I stayed frozen until my mother returned. When she walked in, she took one look at my face and dropped the bags. He was here, wasn't he? I nodded. Tears spilled before I could stop them. My mother wrapped her arms around me like she used to when I was little. He doesn't get to walk in and demand things. You don't owe him anything. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't end here. When a man like Daniel wanted something, especially something he thought belonged to him, he didn't walk away. He came back with force. And he wasn't just looking for closure. He was looking for his children. For a heartbeat, everything inside me went still. The twins stood barefoot in the hallway, hair messy from rolling around on the carpet, crayons still in their hands. Completely innocent, completely unaware of the earthquake their tiny question just caused. "Mommy, who's that man?" My son repeated, tilting his head curiously. Mark looked at them like he'd been struck across the face. His lips parted, his eyes softened. Something in him broke. I could see it, plain as day. It was the look of someone who suddenly realized the life he threw away didn't just move on. It grew. Before I could speak, Ethan stepped slightly forward, putting himself between the twins and Mark, not aggressively, just protectively. The kind of instinctive protection that comes naturally only to people who actually care. He's just someone who was leaving. Ethan said gently. The twins blinked, processing that, then nodded and scampered over to me. My daughter wrapped her arms around my leg. My son hugged my hip. Their little voices overlapped. "We're hungry. Can we have apples? Can he fix the TV?" Pointing at Ethan. The normalcy of their questions made the air even heavier. Mark's gaze dropped to their arms, wrapped around me. The softness in his eyes darkened into something else, confusion, longing. Maybe even pain, but I didn't let myself care. "Kids," I said quietly, running a hand through their hair. "Why don't you go sit at the table? I'll get you snacks in just a minute, okay?" They chirped and rushed toward the dining table. Only when they were out of earshot did I finally face Mark again. "You need to go," I repeated, firmer now. Mark shook his head. "Not until I get an answer." Ethan tensed, and I could feel him holding back every protective instinct in his body. "You don't get answers today," I said. "You don't get answers at all if you show up here demanding them." Mark ran a hand through his hair, pacing like he was trying to hold himself together. I just need to know. If there's even a chance, there was no chance when you left," I cut in. "You made that clear." "That was a mistake," he shot back, voice cracking in the middle. I thought I wanted something else. I thought I needed more than what we had. And I was wrong. I almost laughed. It wasn't humor, it was disbelief. "You didn't just leave me," I said, my voice sharper now. "You humiliated me. You told our families I couldn't give you anything. You told me I wasn't a real woman because I couldn't get pregnant." Ethan's jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle twitch. Mark closed his eyes, regret washing over his face like a tide. I know I was cruel. But people change. You don't get to change after the damage is done. I snapped. Silence swallowed the room. Mark finally spoke. "Do they know about me?" I stared at him. "Why would they?" He hesitated. "Because if I'm their father, you're not," I said coldly. The words hit him hard. His shoulders dropped like someone had punched the air out of him. For a moment, he looked empty, hollow. But then something else flickered behind his eyes. Suspicion. Double quotes. "If I'm not their father," he said stiffly, "then who is?" His tone froze my blood. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't regret. This was control trying to claw its way back. Ethan stepped between us completely now, his voice low but unyielding. "You need to walk out that door. No." Mark lifted his chin. "She can speak for herself." "No," Ethan countered. "You forfeited that right." They stared each other down, two very different men. One driven by ego, the other by protection. I took a long breath, steadying myself. "The twins' father is irrelevant to you," I said. "You don't get to come here and interrogate me about my life after you walked out of it." Mark looked toward the dining table, toward the children he didn't know existed. His voice cracked again. I need time to understand. No, I said softly. You don't need time. You need to accept that the door you closed behind you doesn't open anymore. His eyes glistened, but he blinked the emotion away, replacing it with something colder. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Yes," I whispered. "It is." He looked at me one last time, searching for something he no longer had any right to look for, then turned and walked out the door. Closing it behind him with a finality that echoed through the house, I exhaled shakily. My legs felt weak. My chest felt too tight. Ethan placed a gentle hand on my arm. "You okay?" "No," I admitted. "But I will be." He nodded, not pushing, not prying, because he knew healing wasn't instant. From the dining table, my daughter called, "Mommy, you forgot the apples." Ethan smiled softly. "Go on." "I've got the door." I nodded, stepping toward the kitchen. But before I reached the counter, I paused. Because outside the window, I saw Mark sitting in his car, staring at my house, staring at the life he never expected me to have. I knew deep down this wasn't the last time he'd show up. He wasn't done. Not by a long shot.
For the rest of the evening, I tried to pretend like nothing had happened. I cut up apples, poured juice into little plastic cups, and listened to the twins tell me about the castle they were building out of couch cushions. Ethan finished fixing the TV, played a quick game of peekaboo with them, and laughed when they demanded high fives for no reason at all. Everything looked normal. But underneath, nothing felt normal. Even after Ethan left for the night, after the twins were tucked into bed, after I washed the dishes and wiped down the counters, my mind kept replaying the moment I saw Mark standing in my doorway. The way he looked at the twins. The way he questioned me. The way he said this isn't over. By the time I crawled into bed, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that sharpens every fear. I kept staring at the ceiling in the dark, wondering what Mark was going to do next. Wondering how much of my new life he would try to pry into. Wondering if he would come back tomorrow. I hated that part of me still knew him well enough to guess the answer. He would. He always came back when he needed control. Sometime around midnight, I finally drifted off, only to jolt awake at dawn when a car engine rumbled outside. My heart leapt into my throat. I rushed to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see. And there he was. Mark. Parked across the street. Sitting in his car like a watchdog. My stomach flipped with a shaky mix of anger and dread. The truth was a name I never thought I'd say again. A name I had pushed out of my life because keeping it close would have destroyed me. A name that still held the power to ruin everything if it surfaced. Because the twins' father wasn't Mark. Not even close. Their father was the last person Mark would ever expect. His brother. And he had no idea. Not yet. But if Mark kept pushing, kept digging, kept demanding answers, the past would explode into the present. And none of us were ready for that. For hours after that realization slipped like ice down my spine, I tried to focus on anything else. I helped the twins build a blanket fort. I cleaned up their spilled juice. I watched them dance around the living room like two tiny whirlwinds with mismatched socks and giggles too big for their bodies. But no matter how brightly their smiles glowed, the shadow of the past kept creeping closer. The name I'd buried. The name I hadn't whispered in 2 years. The name that could tear this entire fragile life apart if it surfaced. David. Mark's older brother. The man who had shown me kindness when my marriage was falling apart. The man who actually listened when I cried. The man who warned me that Mark's bitterness was turning into cruelty long before I admitted it. And the man who left abruptly, silently, months before Mark walked out on me. The twins didn't know him. They had never met him. And he didn't know about them. Not because I wanted to keep them hidden. But because when I found out I was pregnant, I tried to tell him, and he never answered. His number was disconnected. His email bounced back. His apartment was empty. He had vanished like he'd never existed. So I did the only thing I could. I raised my children alone. And I never spoke his name again. Until now, until the possibility of Mark forcing a DNA test felt so close it made my skin prickle. If he found out they were David's, I didn't want to think about what he'd do.